Okay, so what I want to do is go over an overview of all of the different conservation research programs that are going on at the Whatcom Conservation District. And how many of you are aware that we even do research or demonstration or exploratory work at the Conservation District? A few of you? Well, that's great. At least a handful of you know that. So I appreciate that. And if you didn't know it by the end of this presentation, you surely will. And maybe you'll even want to get involved in some of this stuff, which would be awesome. So I always start with a slide like this. What do you see here? And as dairy folks, you're going to see something different than a community member, than a regulatory agency, and so on and so forth. But what you're going to see here, you're either going to see this as an asset or a liability. And unfortunately, this is where many of you are starting to see what I would consider the most valuable product on a dairy farm or any livestock facility, which is your manure. This is one of the most valuable products that we have to increase the quality of soil, the quality of your plants. It's an organic fertilizer. There's so much good stuff that goes along with manure. And to me, it is an extremely important asset. And I joke with a lot of the dairy farmers that milk is a byproduct of your manure production, which is by far the best thing you produce. But it's going this direction, right? This is a big problem. And so one of the projects, or actually I should say our entire program, is revolved around this, to ensure that the manure that is produced on your farm, particularly in that nutrient management context, that we're seeing it as an asset, we're treating it as an asset, and we're finding ways to decrease its liability potential so that it remains something great that you produce, not this product that you're afraid to get sued over and have water quality issues and runoff things, and you have to spend millions of dollars to contain and treat and so on and so forth. We want to keep it in this positive asset. And a lot of that comes from your perspective as a manure producer, collector, handler, user, and so on and so forth, is what is your objective? And this may change throughout the year, and you may have heard me talk about this before, but when we think about agronomics, we're talking nutrient management. When you're thinking about what's the value, the nutrient value of manure, how much nitrogen, how much phosphorus, how much should I put out? I want to make sure my crop gets what it needs. I want to wait till the right time. I want to do this right. That's nutrient management. When you're thinking, oh man, my lagoon's full, I just got to get to the date until I can just dump this stuff out there. I don't care how much it is. I need to get out as much as possible. I just have to get rid of it. That's waste disposal. Now we've gone from an asset to a liability thought process, in which case that's not where we want to be. Again, most of the year you may be here. This may happen to you. It happens to everyone come January or February. You're worrying about this, but you can still operate here. And so our program, all of our research projects, with thinking about different practices and setbacks and advisories, which I'll show you today, we're focusing here. We're trying to make sure you still operate in this really positive nutrient management asset-focused context when you're dealing with your manure. In our program, all of our research, we all talk about surface water a lot. I want to preface this with surface water. It's one of the biggest things we talk about, but I'm thinking about everywhere, the whole system. So when I work with you on anything, we think about surface water, but we also think about groundwater and air quality, and most importantly, your soil quality. All of these different kind of our biggest environmental factors that all work in concert together is what farming is reliant on. So you have a very symbiotic relationship here where you are producing value for your soil and for surface water and so on, and these things are also producing value for you. So you are intrinsically connected to every single one of these, and oftentimes if we do have a pollution event, most of the time it comes from just not knowing. You just had no idea that was an issue. You know, there's so many things that even as scientists we discover and went, oh boy, who knew that was a problem? Let's try to fix that. Or we spend all our time working on surface water and fixing that and reducing that, that we do it at the expense of one of these other resources, let's say air quality, for instance. So we have to make sure we're thinking about trade-offs and all that. So that's what our projects always are trying to balance and think about. And then I could throw things in here like we have to think about economics, right? And liability and community connection and so on and so forth. There's all of those extra pieces that aren't in the environmental obviousness, but that we have to always connect and think about. So some of our program highlights, now that you kind of have a context of our program and where we're always thinking, these are some of the things I want to share with you. We have a lot more going on and some other projects, but I want to share our decision support tools. Most of you have hopefully seen these. Hopefully you even use them. Our Discovery Farms program, which we've been really getting going the last year or two. A neat little watershed assessment that was recently done that we'd like to expand throughout the county. And then a water quality monitoring, real-time water quality monitoring effort pilot project that's starting up and growing throughout the county. So a few kind of things I want to share with you. So the first one I want to share, and I'll go through this kind of surfacey because I'm hoping many of you have seen it, or you can take the time afterwards to go do a little exploration or talk to me direct. But this is our application risk management program, and this is what I've spent, the last, since I've been here in many years developing out. And the point of this whole ARM program, if you will, was to take the 4 R's of nutrient management, being thinking about nutrient management from the right timing, the right rate, the right source, and the right placement of manure application. And this is what those nutrient management plans that you have, either your dairy nutrient management plan or a farm plan or otherwise, that you've got to think about those 4 different environmental resources and how you interact with them and how you can prevent having any kind of impact to them. And in particular, it's this part, the manure nutrient management. That's a lot of my focus, being a nutrient management specialist, that I spend my time on. And these are actually, some of this is really easy and some of it's not so easy. It seems so obvious, but it's really not. And your dairy nutrient management plan or farm plan, it's handed over. We hope that we've imparted a lot of wisdom with it, and we let you go to it. And sometimes then you say, well, holy heck, how do I actually make this happen? And so our goal was to make decision support tools for you to be able to make those decisions real time, to take that static, stagnant document and bring some dynamic everyday help and function to it for you. In particular, the 2 of these that make the biggest difference are finding the right time for manure placement, or manure application, I should say. So in other words, making sure you're putting it on when your crops need it, when we're not going to have a runoff event, when we're not going to increase leaching potential, putting all those things together in some magical equation that, should be easy. And then the right placement. So this is the setbacks piece. And we're going to have, just a side note on this, a special presentation from Department of Agriculture at our manure event in January, talking about a really neat kind of flyover and that they did recently, looking pre and post application during a rainy time period, and to see what actually made the biggest difference in manure application and having a water quality kind of violation. And it was this, it was following setbacks more than anything else prevented pollution events. And that's pretty awesome. And frankly, it's probably one of the easiest things you can do. It's really easy. So we're going to come back to that one. But this right time and placement are by far our 2 biggest things, and it's what we focus that application risk management program around. And the steps of that and the tools that we've created, if ever you're going to apply manure, 5 easy steps. Number 1, how much do you actually need out there? This actually is pretty important to think about. So it's based on your crop and the time of year, what's going on. The next is, which field should you go out to? Which one is the best for that time of year? Come, let's say, June, July, August. All your fields are pretty kind of equal as far as their, which one shouldn't you go out to? They're all kind of pretty dry and so on and so forth. So it's that beginning and the end of the season. This is really important. You want to make sure you've got field risk maps for that. Determining when to apply, as I mentioned, this is huge. And I'll show you the tool we've created for that. Assessing your field conditions, also very important. The time might be right, but your field may not be. So just because the weather window is clear and gorgeous and, this is great, we've got no rain coming, I'm gonna get out there, doesn't mean your field is in any condition to allow you to do that. And vice versa. You may have a field that is in prime condition, it's really well drained, there's no moisture out there, but we've got a fairly decent rain event coming, so you should really actually lay off of that. So that's why these two things are really important to tie together. And then lastly, of course, is always applying and monitoring following setbacks. So I want to go through these three things with you to just give an update on where those came from and how we created them, and hopefully encourage you to use them if you're not already. And the first one is our manure spreading advisory. So how many people have ever, even once, pulled up the manure spreading advisory here? Okay, even if you haven't, you should just raise your hand, otherwise I'll get mad at you. So, okay, so our manure spreading advisory, this is something I hope we've made very, very easy for you to use. It's optimized for your phone, for your computer. You should pull it up in the morning. It's auto-updated every day. It's a very easy thing to use for Whatcom County, and it's actually the whole kind of western Washington area. So if you have friends that farm in other areas, you can tell them about it if they're not using it already. But it's essentially a way that we took the precipitation forecast and we used it, all this background science-y statistics and so on and so forth, to figure out, based on the precipitation coming for the next 3 or so days, what is the risk of applying at that time. And our goal here, and I don't trust anything more than 3 days out around here, by the way, our forecast changes way too rapidly. And frankly, if I did give you more than that, it would be wrong, and you'd stop using this because you'd be like, oh man, the thing's at high and it was a beautiful sunny day, you know. So that's why we give you this 3-day window. And our goal here was, let's say we've got a low risk followed by high risk, or vice versa. It gives you the opportunity to say, this is my last day, I've got to wrap things up and then I'm going to wait. Or, hey, it looks like in a few days things are looking low risk, I'm going to call the custom guy, or I'm going to get our line going and getting ready so that we can get out there. What I don't want anyone to ever do ever again is say, oh, it's about to rain, I better get out there and get all my manure so that I don't miss the opportunity. No, that's probably, you shouldn't be out there. You need a few days for it to soak in. If we've got a big event, that stuff can still move. Something in the research context, by the way, I should add to here that we don't know about and we'd like to know more about is something, let's say, like fecal coliform survivability. Let's say in August, if we had a rain coming and you had manure out there, in 1 or 2 days, did the sun kill all of that fecal coliform? And that may not be our biggest concern, versus, let's say, in February when it's cool and it's overcast and everything else, does that fecal coliform last 5 or 6 days and we need a greater window before we have an issue? That's something we don't know, and I know I get questions about that. That's on our list of hopeful projects in the future, in ways that we can improve this further and further. So we're actually adding some really neat things, soil moisture and some other things into this. We're continually trying to improve it for you so that you can do kind of a one-stop shopping to be able to go to this and see it and make a really good, informed, real-time decision on yay or nay for manure application. A couple extra things that are in here too is that, well, it's right down here if you were on our webpage, but I always try to give a verbal what's happening right now. So either this time of year, I might just say it's just an update for November, you know, rain's coming, go chill out, do other things, farming's over for the season. But let's say in the kind of busy time of year, especially February, March, April, where it's rain, it's not, it's rain, it's not, I always try to give you a little verbal what's going on and when's a good time to be out there or not, and so on and so forth. And something really cool that we've got on here is that we now have a manure text alert system. Is anyone in here signed up for that already? Well, if you're not, you can text right now. Easy manure to 797979 and you'll be signed up. And what I try to do is what I just kind of told you about. If there's a big rain event coming, or if setbacks change for the season, something big happens, I send out a text. I try not to send these out very often. You may get, 0 in the summer, or you may get 1 because there's a weird rain event coming and you're busy, you're doing this and that, you're not looking at the forecast every day. To have someone send you a little note that like, hey, there's a 1-inch event coming in 2 days, prepare yourself. Or for the opposite end of things, when we start getting dry periods that start popping up January, February, you get a notice, hey, there's a week-long dry period. If you've got those high, dry CNU soils, time to start thinking about things. So I try to really get those out so it's information that's really going to help you to make a good informed decision. So, and you can stop time, if you find them annoying or there's too many or it's not helpful, you just text stop and you stop getting them. So this is something, and there's little cards over on the table too. They're about this size that has information not only on the website to go find that manure spreading advisory, but also to sign up for this manure spreading alert system. So, and I would love feedback, and this is kind of some reminders of what that looks like. So this one was, manure application setbacks from all waterways and swales is 80 feet, finished this week, spreading in flood areas, be safe, not lucky, try to give you some advice there too. So anyway, that's kind of what they would look like. Anyway, but if you ever have feedback on these too, please let me know. Like, oh, I liked it when you do these ones aren't helpful. It'd be great if you gave us notices about X, Y, or Z. So I would love to hear more of that, what's helpful and what you guys like and what would you prefer to see or not to see on those. In what's linked into the manure spreading advisory, I'm not going to go over this in detail. I can do it with you later, but I'm assuming you've heard it or come to our annual spreading event or our annual manure training, hear it again. But this is a really important part. When I was talking about those 5 steps of manure application, and there was, the manure spreading advisory is a great way to just give you an idea of the rainfall and the potential for having a runoff. This worksheet will tell you for that specific field what your individual risk is. And this is what we like people to use in the high risk seasons. So to me, I think of those as shoulder seasons. Let's think about that October plus or minus, or February plus or minus a month. That's when I really want to see these filled out. It protects you. If, let's say, you go through this and it's a low risk and you've got a January field, that's great for that winter spreading, because we do like to see a small amount of our fields that are the right ones to get out early. It's really good for grass growth. We found out through all of our 4 years of research that went into creating this sheet, that if you do get out there and you do the sheet and it says low risk, and your neighbor or someone else comes over and says you shouldn't be applying, it's not November or February something or T something, and you can say, actually, here's my worksheet that they did, and I followed my setbacks and I've done everything else, and thank you for your concern, but I'm actually doing a great job. That's what this is for. Likewise, it may flip you around to say, like, oh boy, that's a high-risk field. I had no idea. I really shouldn't get out there. I'm going to maybe go out to this field instead. And at first, you may feel like the spreading advisory or this doesn't allow you to do things you've done in the past, but maybe those things you've done in the past weren't a good idea. And so this is just helping you, educate you to say these are good conditions and these are not such great conditions, and help you fit in to where you are one of our grand stewards of water quality on your manure application in those fields that you've got. This works for grazing, this works for lawns, this works for anything that you're going to go out to a field to evaluate what's my risk of having a runoff event. So it's a really nice tool that we've got for you. And it's linked, by the way, right through here. So when you go to the manure spraying advisory and you click on your farm, and let's say this said things are okay, or by anything, you can say whatever it wants, and you say, oh, I'm curious what my field's like, just click right there, and it will take you to the worksheet that you'll fill out. It's fairly easy, it's very self-explanatory, and there's a lot of extra links in there if you have a question about it, or you call me and we do it together the first time, and just kind of help you through it, help you understand it. So, and that also is mobile friendly. We try to do everything so you can do it right from your phone and email the results to yourself, so you don't have to print it from a tractor or so on and so forth. So we really tried to work on these for you guys. And like I said, this one too was one of our biggest research projects. We had 4 years of data at 4 different farms that helped us develop all the different parameters in here to make sure that it works, and to make sure that these results down here on the risk are not onerous, that they're real, they're representative, and you can follow them and be comfortable with that. And then the last thing in the ARM application risk management is the setback distances. This is something that we're actually testing now. So the values here are based on review of good science and practices and using NRCS guidance, that instead of saying 100 feet all year round, like the CAFO permit will instruct you to do, or anything else out there, we found that this is how it works. That in the summertime, you only are about 10 feet. You know, we're so dry here in the summer. You should fertilize that field and get maximum production from it. Get everything going and growing and happy. But then in those shoulder seasons, you know, September can be kind of rainy. And or we're prepping, we're getting cooler, we're prepping for October and so on and so forth. So we're looking for 40 feet. Just back it up a little bit. Trust me, you're not going to lose much there. You've had a lot of good fertilizer application in all this time period. And then when we get to our higher seasons, we need 80 feet. And that's because of the run factor. So you get rain on that whole field, you get rain where there was manure application, it can run all the way through that 80 feet in some areas. It depends on your slope and other things. Your field might be more or less, and your plan for your specific field will be specific to that. And then same on this end, that we want greater distances in January, February, and then it starts to go down as we start to dry out a little bit and have a little bit less rain and so on and so forth. So kind of does one of these, and we're hoping that you're okay with giving a lot of space in the high risk time because you don't have to in the low risk time, and you can really farm that field well. And as I mentioned, we are doing, and I'll show you this, some edge of field monitoring now to look at how effective are these on different soil types, and you know, do we need to modify this for that? So we're always trying to get things really dialed down for you, and particularly based on soil types. We now have different manure application guidance on timing based on that. Sandy soils are January to September, and heavier clay-based soils might actually be, you know, February, March through October. So we're even shifting those on a soil type basis from all the things that we've learned through all the research that we've done, and kind of balancing surface water runoff potential and the leaching potential, and trying to put all those together. So we're definitely getting more information to give to you, farmers, landowners, manure applicators, to be really savvy and very specific about what you're doing and how you're getting it out there. So you're still getting, you know, the maximized kind of manure use, but now we're also looking at maximizing forage production and soil quality and all those other pieces too. We're trying to do the best we can. So Discovery Farm. So this is one of our bigger projects in the last 2 years that we're slowly growing. And Discovery Farms is a neat program that we've adopted from Wisconsin. We're the first state in the West to actually have a model that's labeled the Discovery Farms program, that we're working with a handful of producers already, and we'd like to expand as we get more projects. But it's essentially, as everything that we've talked about so far, creating decision tools for you. Now this is for the on-the-ground research to test a lot of those. So our real goal and our whole program is just understanding the effectiveness of all those land conservation practices we're asking you to do. So in your dairy plan or your farm plan, there's a whole suite of things you're asked to do, whether that be, you know, filter strips or setbacks or cover crops or so on and so forth. And now we really want to work with farms, on farms, to see how well does this work. And as I just mentioned too, we want to do it not just by practice, but practice and soil type and some of these other things, so we can maximize, you know, if you are in different parts of the county or you've got different soil types on your farm, what's going to work best where and how. So we can just really start to dial these in, just crisper and crisper for you, for really getting it working. Another big part of Discovery Farms is that we're really working on the outreach and education, not only to you as farmers, but the farmer-to-farmer peer education review, and education to partner agencies and stakeholders and those who may question the conservation practices being employed out there, so that we can say, here's the data on how they work and where they work, and, you know, et cetera, so that they know these things as well, instead of just questioning it. If we have the data to support it and show that these things are working, that's the most valuable thing that we've got for you. So that's a really big one. And always, always, always looking at the practical, economic, and effective aspects of practices. I'm never going to tell you to do something because it preserves water quality, but it's going to cost you $4 million, and it's a little thing to do. That's kind of a hard sell. But if I can find a practice or a way to implement a practice that increases and looks at all three of those together, now we've got a win for everybody. Because I may be more concerned about water quality, you're more concerned about productivity on that field, but if we can marry the two together in a win-win, that's the best practice we can find. So I'm always looking for that kind of connection there, such that everything works out really nicely. And with Discovery Farms, it's a farmer-focused kind of project, right? So a lot of research done by universities or others historically has been, we have this grand idea and we want to do all this research and we start in the ivory tower and hopefully in the end it's useful to somebody, but shoot, we're really interested. And our Discovery Farms is the opposite. You know, I want to know what you guys are interested in, or I already know what you're being mostly affected by with policy and water quality and local issues, and you have buzz and questions and all this. So we're trying to grab all those things, and that's where our research questions come from you. We find funding and we make it happen. So that's the important part of this, that it's farmer focused. Here in our area, it's the conservation districts who are leading that. We do use universities and other partners as appropriate for projects, of course, and that we're really, as I mentioned, wanting to make sure we've got the education outreach component all along the way so that we're getting that information shared to people. The most important part about this is that how it works, at least with our edge of field monitoring in particular, is that I always tell people there's no bad data. We never find bad data, we just find ways practices aren't working right. And then we improve it until we have, quote, good data, and we find how they are working. To me, bad data is just as important as good data, because I want to know, how does a practice not work? You know, so that we can find all the areas that are being done that way, and then we can swap it over to the way that we now understand how it does work. So that, to me, is always important, and getting that to people is really, really valuable. So the biggest thing that we're doing in Discovery Farms right now is our edge of field monitoring. And this is capturing stormwater directly from a field. And this is a setup, this is a picture out of Wisconsin, because I didn't want to show any of our local farms, so I didn't want to out anybody. But so essentially what it does is we find an area of a field and we try to find like a paired one, right? So we have a control, so just business as usual, and then we have a treatment, if you will, or like how we're going to modify it and change it up and see if the two are different. And we try to find a field or two fields that are the same soil type, everything is the same so that they're comparable, and as the water drains through, we find the low spot. And then we have this little thing called a flume here, which captures all that water. And then as the water goes through there, there's a little tube into this box full of really high-tech cool equipment that takes that water sample, and then we get it analyzed for nutrients and sediment and maybe fecal coliform, just to see what's happening. And it's been so interesting for us we've got one farm already that we've got over a year of data. We've got 3 more that we just got in. So we've got 4 total different farms where we've got these setups. And it's been so interesting so far on fields and they're all different soil types. So we had no idea how much certain soil types would run off, or others that we expected run off in certain times of the year, and we're getting nothing. So it's for us just absolutely increasing what we know about when fields run off, that we can pass right back to farmers and say, here's actually your really high runoff times. We had no idea. This is when we need to be the most protective. Here's another time we really thought it would and it didn't. So we can actually do different farming practices and timing during this time. So we can measure all sorts of stuff. And the nice part is it's a uniform setup, so our data is comparable. If we get these down in Snohomish County or over in the Palouse, anywhere in the state, or our partners in Wisconsin, we can actually compare data. Our soil types are relatively similar in some of those areas. So it's really nice to be able to share that, and that you have a lot of confidence that the data that's being collected on all these farms is validated and statistically analyzed, and it's quality assurance and so on and so forth, so that it's really good stuff coming right back to you. And as I mentioned, it's no bad data. We really focus on, when that data comes back out, that it's for you, that it's, you know, educating people, that it is shared with our partners, absolutely, but in a really productive way, so they understand what's happening out there. And this is an example from Wisconsin about what this may look like for phosphorus or nitrogen or nitrate, etc. When we're like, oh, you know, here's more, here's less through the seasons, and you know, you can just see the data in different ways. Here's a set that we got. What we can do when we collect this data, we can collect it, let's say, in 1 hour increments. We can collect it all for a 24-hour period. We have all this different ways we can look at things. And this is a runoff event. So rain started, and it took a little while actually after the rain started, and then we had just a lot of runoff, and then it slowly kind of tapered off, and we had another kind of spike afterwards as it came through. So really interesting, even looking at the patterns of how fields run off. And we're still trying to like process all this information and data before we can really get it out and share it, but really neat things that we're able to see. And so this, our edge of field work that we're doing here, and you're gonna see a lot more of this in about a year when we have all these different sites going. We'd love to add more of these as we go down the road. And the hardest part is finding those fields that match up, and of course, willing landowners. But one kind of neat thing about this, and something that's really, really important to me, no matter the research project we do, is the data confidentiality. There's a huge fear with all farmers, no matter what the project is, no matter what water sample comes off of your farm, that that data can be used against you. I know that so well. And so we really strive for making sure that any of the data that we collect and report out is protected. We do the absolute best we can in providing confidentiality for those that we work with. And this program in particular happens to come through NRCS EQIP. So I won't even get into what that means or how convoluted it ends up being, but it means your data is very well protected. It's actually federally protected under this program, which is pretty darn neat. So it does add a layer of that, which is important. And then we have a data sharing agreement with landowners that says, you know, can we use this data? This is how we're going to report it out. Does this look good to you? Wonderful. We'll get it on out and share it with people. So that's also an important part of all the research that we do. And I always like people to know that and understand that. And I'm welcome for a broader conversation about that if you have questions as well, but always important. So a couple extra little things really quickly. One neat thing that we just recently finished up was a watershed assessment pilot project with our partner NRCS, and we did it for the Tenmile watershed that was chosen for this project by NRCS and some others. And the point of this whole project was to figure out, in a watershed, the 10-mile watershed, this one was specifically to, how do we look at conservation practices to improve water quality while maintaining agricultural productivity? That's the key with this program, and doing long-term watershed planning. So the goals of this project were to characterize the whole watershed. And like I said, we can do this with any watershed we would like to, for your benefit. So we'll go through and figure out, you know, mapping and land use, what's farming practices, what's residential, livestock on their septic systems, areas of high waterfowl use, and so on and so forth. So we know every little nook and cranny, the soil types, the slopes, everything of that watershed. And in addition to that, we also want to understand the social factors. So the people there, you, farmers, residents, and so on and so forth. What are you doing on your land? And if there's things we would recommend, what are your barriers for putting those things in there? What are your perceptions and ideas on water quality and other things, and working with your neighbors and other folks? All these things are really important to integrate not only the characterization, but also the people factor that's on that land and in that watershed. And then figuring out with all that together, how do we reach out to landowners to improve those areas that may need that improvement? And how do we allocate resources? So this is with any agency, any of you on your farm, right? How do I maximize my time, my energy, and my money so that I get the best outcome out of it? And we have to do the same thing with everything that we do, working with our partners and in our district and planning and so on and so forth. So that's what we did, and what our results look like. And if you would like the report of this, you can ask me for it. It's a big one. I can get you access through NRCS to see that. But in the end, a whole lot of great modeling that was done by a team in our office. We can look at what are the highest risks, so dark would mean higher potentials. I'm not saying this is happening, but just the potential for phosphorus or nitrogen or pathogens or sediment in there based on the current land use. And then we can go to those areas that might be high risk and ask that landowner, okay, what are you already doing? Great, you're doing this, this, and this. Wow, that decreases your risk by half. You're wonderful. Or, okay, we've got some work to do. Let's try implementing these few things. So it helps us, instead of, having to target an entire watershed and try to get to every landowner, we can say, all right, dark spots are nitrogen, that's our focus, let's start there. And it helps us a lot, and it helps you think about those things too. Where am I in the county, and what are my issues? And then when we combine all those together, again, using, red as highest risk down to light green, you can kind of look, what is the biggest bang for my buck kind of a deal on what are those highest risk areas and which area of the drainage. And, we've got all these little dots, we've got some bigger dots, and so on and so forth. So this is just something you might see come into other county or other watersheds over time, to just see like what's happening here and how can we allocate resources, and are you in one of these, kind of redder areas. And it just means high potential, doesn't mean this is your current. And then you can kind of do a checklist on, okay, here's all the things I'm doing. Oh wow, that that puts me back into a light green, I'm doing great. Or there's a few things I can do. So kind of another kind of neat thing that we're doing in the office. And then the last project, actually I should add to that, with the social indicators, the important part that we're needing from you, and if any of you are actually in the Tenmile watershed, you'll be seeing a survey come your way to kind of gather this type of information, knowing your awareness and knowledge and attitudes, beliefs, values, behaviors, constraints, and capacity. And this is Annika's area of work, where she tries to capture all of those things for that social kind of add-on to that. Sure, I can geek out a lot about soil types and manure, nutrients, and all that, but without the human factor knowledge, it's really hard to make anything happen. So that that we're not only doing a lot of this kind of traditional science, but we're also doing a lot of the social science in our office to make sure everything works together really smartly and that things actually happen, that we get positive results. So the last one, has anyone heard of ZAPS monitors? It's real-time E.coli monitors. Very few. Okay, a couple of you. So this is something new that's coming up, and you may not actually see these around. You might see one of them, but they're kind of dotted here and there. And this is a project with a bunch of partners: EPA, Department of Health, Department of Ecology, Department of Ag, the Lummies, Whatcom County Public Works, the district, and then ZAPS, the actual company themselves. A lot of people are working on this pilot project. So these ZAPS monitors kind of looks like this, big metal box. Inside is a whole lot of high-tech photo instruments and so on and so forth. The point is to deploy these out and getting real-time water quality results back for E. coli, nutrients like nitrate, nitrite, solids, oxygen, hydrocarbons, all these various parameters out there to just try to pick up what are trends in these certain areas. There's funding to get 5 of these deployed in the Nooksack watershed. The project runs through 2019. And I will say that our goal is to observe trends, daily, season, annual, location, by these different parameters in those different areas. And the areas, I'll show you a map where they're at, but they're just kind of sprinkled around. It's never to actually like put them on a farm or next to a landowner to see what's happening. No. What we're just trying to do, number one, is figure out, these machines even work. So we're doing a lot of just data quality collection on that to see if they work, and then to see, when we do get data back that's, looking at E. coli and sediment and various things, when we get a high spike, was that indicative of an event or something else? Is this a way that agencies can use this to then go out and see what's happening? One of our goals is to put one of these at the border so that we can see what is that Canadian influence. It's really hard. When Annika talked earlier about the water quality sampling, it's on a schedule and it's once a month, and they take a fecal coliform sample. But what happens the rest of the month or the rest of that day or any of those other times? To help us understand, are there natural trends happening out there? When do we get these spikes? I think it's going to give a lot of good information to those folks in the county that work in this area. And these are the black dots show the units that are already out and deployed in the county, and the yellow show the ones that we're currently working on trying to get installed. And so you can see we try to get them at different areas. The one here at the mouth of the Nooksack is run by the Lummies. The other 5, the Whatcom Conservation District, is working with all those partners as kind of the technical lead to get these installed and working right. And we're trying to find, you know, the mouth of areas or midway through places or up at the border, just to try to see, you know, what is the influence of an urban area into a mostly farmed area, or the end of a farmed area, or upper part of a no-sack versus lower. So just to kind of get them out and about in different types of water coming through. We want low volume, high volume, areas we know will get a lot of sediment or not. So just to kind of mix it up a little bit. So this will be really interesting to follow. As I mentioned, there's 3 in. We're trying to get the other 3 in just to start seeing what that looks like. And I'm hoping again at the January meeting we might be able to show some of that data from some of these. That is that fall period. So we need to keep getting them in so we can get that data and show what that's looking like. And again, most of it up to this point, they've been in for at least a year, one of them, and the other ones for this summer, that we're just trying to figure out what that looks like and how they're working. So that's going to be an interesting one that as it evolves, and I'm sure you guys will hear more about it. Again, it's not to, you know, look at the water from any one region as a regulatory perspective per se, just to see like what does it do in all these areas? What are trends? And when we see something here, will we see it there, and so on and so forth. Just helping us understand water quality a little bit better, which is something that's always a good thing to improve our knowledge of. And then some other projects to note that we've been working on here. I won't even go through all of them, but it's a lot. Just so you know that we work on a lot of little projects, big projects, short-term projects, long-term projects. There's tons. We are always trying to find ways to answer your questions and to get you information, to build better decision-making tools, to help improve water quality or air quality or soil water quality in our county for farmers, for community members, for regulatory, for policy, and so on and so forth. So we really try to use our data in as many possible ways as we can to increase everybody's understanding and knowledge of all these different areas and concepts. So that's really important.